Jassy existed in the narrow spaces between wavelengths, occupying a slice of reality that human biology simply could not detect. Her species evolved beneath twin suns where ultraviolet and infrared light dominated perception, shaping eyes and neural pathways that drifted far beyond human vision. On Sol Station, a massive research hub orbiting a dying galaxy, she moved like a ghost through corridors of steel and crystal, unseen by the very species that led the project. To humans, she was nothing more than a distortion, a shimmer mistaken for faulty lighting or tired eyes. Sol Station housed 14 intelligent species, each racing against time to solve the entropy collapse consuming the universe. Stars were aging faster than models predicted, energy was bleeding away, and entire systems faced extinction. Jassy was not a minor contributor. She was one of the Vistry's leading quantum membrane theorists, responsible for multiple breakthroughs that reframed how dimensional boundaries behaved under entropy stress. Her research was cited across the station, debated in committee chambers, and used in simulations meant to save civilizations. Yet she herself remained unseen. For 3 orbital cycles, Jassy adapted. She memorized corridors through vibration and airflow. She announced her presence through holographic avatars during meetings, knowing the projection would receive more acknowledgement than her real form. Other species saw her clearly, the methane-breathing Corfax, the crystalline air dram, the collective Vesper hive. Humans alone passed through her like mist. It wasn't cruelty. It was biology. Still, isolation weighed heavily. Being unheard was one thing. Being unseen was something else entirely. Daniel Reeves worked the station's night shift, maintaining waste reclamation and thermal regulation systems few others wanted to touch. A trained astrophysicist sidelined by competitive funding and administrative politics, he found comfort in quiet corridors and repetitive diagnostics. He talked to himself while working, narrating procedures to stay focused, his voice echoing softly against alloy walls. Jassy noticed him long before he noticed her. Humans fascinated her, especially one who spoke aloud into the emptiness as if expecting an answer. She followed him one shift, then another, standing nearby while he worked, listening to his thoughts spill freely into the silence. When she finally spoke, it was not planned. It simply happened. And for the first time in 3 cycles, someone heard her. Daniel froze when the voice corrected him. He stared at his scanner, then at the empty corridor ahead, pulse accelerating as logic raced to catch up with experience. Hallucination was the easiest explanation, yet the voice carried detail, precision, and familiarity no random thought could fabricate. It referenced his past inspections, calibration errors he hadn't documented, observations too specific to dismiss. He asked the question quietly, cautiously. "Where are you?" The answer came without hesitation. She was standing directly in front of him, close enough that, if he could see her, they would be sharing the same space. Jassy explained calmly that humans lacked the sensory range to perceive her species without artificial enhancement. Her tone was not accusatory. It was practiced, shaped by years of being unheard. Daniel processed quickly. Xenobiology briefings surfaced in his memory. A Vistry physicist assigned to quantum research. A name attached to papers he admired. When he spoke her name aloud, surprise rippled through her voice, unmistakable even across species. Someone knew her work. Someone recognized her beyond a hologram. That moment changed everything. For Jassy, it was validation she hadn't known she still needed. For Daniel, it was a realization that the universe held more than what eyes could confirm. He explained his background, his stalled career, the curiosity that kept him reading research journals long after his role stopped requiring it. He praised her theory, not as flattery, but with genuine understanding. She admitted something no report had ever captured. No human had directly spoken to her in 3 cycles. Not truly. Not like this. Daniel felt the weight of that confession settle heavily in his chest. He apologized instinctively, knowing the words could never fully bridge the gap biology created. Their conversations continued. Quietly. Night after night. Jassy accompanied him during maintenance rounds, explaining entropy gradients and dimensional permeability while Daniel shared abandoned theories and half-finished ideas he'd never dared publish. They talked not as representatives of species, but as thinkers starved for acknowledgement. Something unexpected happened in those forgotten corridors. Ideas aligned. Concepts overlapped. Daniel's understanding of energy flow combined with Jassy's membrane models to form equations neither had seen before. Patterns emerged where none should exist. Possibility flickered where despair had lived. For the first time, Jassy wasn't just present. She was seen. And Daniel realized that listening, truly listening, was a form of vision humanity had almost forgotten how to use. Their collaboration grew quietly, hidden beneath the station's official research layers. Daniel filled data pads with equations while Jassy refined them, correcting assumptions with patient clarity. What began as conversation evolved into genuine discovery. Together, they reframed entropy not as an unstoppable decay, but as a resource flowing across dimensional boundaries. Energy wasn't disappearing. It was moving somewhere else. They proposed controlled entropy wells, stabilized by quantum membranes and guided through precise gravitational harmonics. The math was brutal, elegant, and terrifying. If wrong, it could destabilize local spacetime. If right, it could power civilizations indefinitely. When they finally submitted their joint paper, skepticism followed immediately. A waste systems technician and an invisible physicist were not the saviors anyone expected. But equations do not care about reputation. The predictions held. The tests worked. Within 2 cycles, the prototype activated. Power surged from decay itself, clean and sustained. The entropy curve flattened. Entire star systems gained time they were never meant to have. Committees scrambled to understand how something so revolutionary emerged from ignored minds working in silence. Daniel declined ocular implants. He didn't need them. He had learned to perceive Jassy through presence rather than sight. Air displacement. Thermal shifts. The subtle rhythm of her bioelectric field. She was no longer invisible to him, and perhaps she never truly had been once he chose to acknowledge her existence. Recognition followed, slowly but inevitably. Jassy's work was no longer cited without her presence acknowledged. Her voice carried weight in chambers that once spoke over her. Daniel returned to astrophysics, not as a footnote, but as a contributor to humanity's survival. Yet the most important change was quieter. Humans began questioning what else they failed to see. What voices were dismissed? What truths were ignored because they didn't fit familiar senses? Soul Station changed, not through technology alone, but through awareness. Jassy remained a being between wavelengths. That never changed. But she was no longer alone in that space. Daniel had met her there, in the gap between perception and understanding. The universe did not survive because of strength or dominance. It survived because someone chose to listen. In the end, Soul Station became a symbol not just of survival, but of transformation. Reports recorded the breakthrough as a triumph of interspecies cooperation, yet none captured the truth. It began with a voice in an empty corridor and a human willing to question what he could not see. Jassy returned to her people as a pioneer, not only of science, but of connection. Her story reshaped Vistry's understanding of humanity, reframing them not as blind hosts, but as a species capable of learning new forms of perception. Daniel became something of a quiet legend himself, though he avoided the spotlight. He preferred the hum of machines, the spaces where real change happened without applause. The entropy crisis slowed. Civilization stabilized. New research divisions formed around principles Jassy and Daniel uncovered together. Entire fields emerged from ideas once shared only in whispers during night shifts. Yet the greatest legacy was philosophical. Seeing was redefined. It was no longer limited to photons and neural receptors. It became an act of recognition, of choosing to acknowledge existence even when biology said otherwise. Jassy still existed between wavelengths. That never changed. But humanity learned something vital. The universe is full of presences that do not announce themselves loudly. Some require patience. Some require humility. Some require the courage to admit that perception is incomplete. Daniel and Jassy met often, even after recognition spread. They stood together in the same invisible space where it all began. No implants. No projections. Just understanding. The universe's greatest mysteries did not yield to those who looked harder, but to those who listened longer. To those who accepted that silence sometimes contained voices, and emptiness sometimes held meaning. She was invisible. Until one human chose to see. And in that choice, the universe gained a future.